Our next panel is called The Performance Paradox, High Functioning, High Risk. Our moderator for today is the Chief Culture Curator and Executive Coach for Merging Path. He's a public speaker and trainer, and this is super fun. He's the former bodyguard for Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg. And when he was a kid, he wanted to be a police officer. Please welcome Brooks E. Scott. He's making his way up. Okay, and our first panelist is the VP of Player Engagement for the New York Giants. He is an 8-year veteran of the NFL, a Super Bowl 44 champion, a speaker, and a philanthropist. I'd like to get your prediction for Sunday. And when he was a kid, he wanted to be a high school math and science teacher. Please give it up for Usama Young. Woo-hoo! All right, next up is a founder and CEO of Release Recovery. He is the founding member for Release Recovery Foundation. And when he was a kid, he wanted to be a baseball player. Please welcome Zach Clark. And is our final panelist in the house? Oh, there you are. Hello. Okay. All right. So our final panelist is the licensed psychoanalyst who works with adults and children struggling with depression and anxiety. He is also a clinical associate for Backline. I did not get to find out what he wanted to be when he was a kid, so I'm just going to make it up. He wanted to drive the Wienermobile. Please welcome Isaac Slone. It's all right, all good. What did you want to be when you were a kid?
Veterinarian.
Oh.
Veterinarian.
Thank you. Take it away.
Awesome, thank you. Welcome everyone. Can we start with a little bit of quick math here? So I think all of you know, I used to teach 5th grade was my first job, and I always hated math in college. I was an English major, I was really good at English, but math was not my strong suit. So guess how many of the Fortune 500 CEOs are women? 4. You know? 4, a little more than 4. Got 52, 52. Now, by the way, that's progress. We worked to get to that point here now. So that means there's 448 of those Fortune 500 CEOs are men. And if men are in the positions of most of the power and authority in culture and society, you can look all over different areas where you can see this, then it also means that we're in the position to cause the most harm. Not only just to the people that we're working with, but the people of ourselves. And so I'm so curious to find out what we can talk about and uncover looking about these statistics and how these things are affecting all of us here. So one of the things I want to ask for all of our panelists here, I want to focus a little bit less on what we do, and I want to focus more on what we believe. And on what you believed in the past as well. Good, cool. So I want to start out and just kind of get right into this here. So I'm going to pass this over to our friend Isaac. And by the way, we all just met like 30 seconds ago before we came up here, and no prep today, so this is how we like to roll here. So Isaac, I want to pass this here to you. Let's just get right to something here, deep and serious. What part of a man's identity gets threatened when results start to crumble?
Great question, thank you. Pleasure to be here with you all. So I'm here today representing Backline, which is a mental health and wellness resource for the music industry. As a clinical associate for Backline, I talk with people from the music industry on all different sides of it about what they're looking for in terms of a mental health or wellness resource, which usually results in making a referral to a therapist that's in our network. I myself am a psychotherapist, so I can answer this from both different sort of sides of it. But in the last panel, there was a discussion about how identity can be really wrapped up in work, and I think all of us here recognize that. In the music industry specifically, there's I think added layers to that, considering somebody's artistry is also wrapped up in their career, and so. I think that there's a lot of people I speak to who are evaluating what their life means without work, whether they be off the road for a short period of time or making a pivot or starting a family. And so I think that there's a kind of reckoning that people in the music industry do face at different sort of junctures about how much their identity is wrapped up in their work and how much that's intrinsic to their drive. And what does it mean to have downtime when you're not producing, you're not touring, and who you confront, yourself when I guess the stage is empty or the crew has gone home, so to speak.
It's interesting you're mentioning that downtime and how so many leaders are on the move and are traveling and moving. And so I can imagine that adds a whole other layer to this identity crisis, finding ways to relieve this pressure or not being around people that you love, that you care about. And so, Usama, I'm curious from your position too, as someone who played in NFL for 8 years, a lot of time on the road. And so how has that affected you and maybe some of the players that you're working with now, just constantly moving, constantly being in change and not being around a situation that feels familiar for them?
I appreciate that question because I know a lot of us come from different spaces. Me, of course, starting off with the athletics, I think about all the travel was one thing, but more so the value that I brought to my family. As a player, I'm the youngest brother, right? I got 5 older brothers, and I'm the youngest brother. And immediately when I was drafted to the NFL, I became big bro. I was the primary breadwinner. My parents didn't have a lot of money, and I was taking care of bills on the home front, and now I'm the man. So as years progress, that becomes my identity to some degree. I'm the guy, I'm the man, I'm the one that's gonna hold it down. When things go wrong, if someone gets into a pickle, I gotta deal with it. So when I get removed from the league or the league moves on from me, now it's like, man, what am I gonna do next? And so when I think about what was affected by myself first was my value. My value that I brought. I'm no longer getting these checks. And yes, I set up some good things for myself and my family, but all the glitz and glamour stops. Y'all cheer when the Super Bowl winner comes out. Nah, that's rare now. You used to play. You're no longer on the field, nobody comes to visit you, and immediately you say, daggone, I'm no longer valuable. And I never said it out loud. I just struggle with it internally. So that would be the first thing, and it's a lot of different things, and I know we don't have a lot of time on this panel, but that's the first thing that comes to mind for myself, being in the space that I was in, and being the youngest, and immediately getting crowned as the top man of the household and beyond. Because you're not just in the household now, you're also the community champion too. So, value.
It's a fascinating thing to think about, being the youngest, the smallest, and then overnight just being right to the top now, and all these added responsibilities and pressure and identity that's now put on your shoulders. And Zach, I'm curious for you, and so you're the CEO of Residence Recovery, and I like thinking about all these things we're talking about also through the lens of what happens when we break and what happens when we're trying to come out of that breaking point. And so what's coming up for you as you're listening to our fellow panelists here on the difficulty of coming out of this, or how we can come out of this?
Yeah, I mean, look, I am the CEO of Release Recovery, and we provide behavioral health care resources here in New York and upstate a little bit and out in Austin, Texas. The most important thing about me is I'm a heroin addict in recovery. I'm an alcoholic in recovery. I suffer from anxiety and depression, right? And so the greatest prayer I ever said in my life was, I need help. And I said that prayer 14 years ago, right? And I run an organization of 125 people. I am banging on the drum all day to beg my employees and beg the people around me to ask for help before the breaking point actually happens, right? Because there's a question, I think, coming around of emotional isolation, right? And for me, what that really means is the inability to actually put my hand up and say, hey, I need a little help. I'm struggling. This is what's going on with me. And so, even with being this guy who is like the poster child for behavioral health care, right, in a lot of ways, on my best days, it is still extremely hard to ask for help. So I can't imagine what it's like for folks operating in finance and other industries. I mean, this has been programmed into me day in and day out, time and time again, and it's still hard. So I have a lot of compassion and empathy for men and women and anyone out there who might be struggling and has this fear around asking for help and the stigma that is that's a weakness, which we all know it's not.
You know, I was a New Jersey State Trooper for about 10 years, and I remember you put the uniform on and you put the hat on and you got the gun and the badge and you walk into this room with this, we called it constructive force. And it's walking into a room with that idea, that identity that you are always in control. And what a wild thing to walk into some of these rooms and feel fear for yourself, for your family, for your coworkers. And I think about everything that's happening. This is a whole other discussion for another day, what's happening in our country right now with law enforcement. But I think about all these things that we're talking about here now and how that also affects everybody. And how if we, going back to those Fortune 500 CEOs, don't learn how to do this stuff better for ourselves, we're just going to be causing more and more harm in culture and society. And so you mentioned that emotional isolation. And I'm curious from Isaac, from your perspective, and Usama from yours as well, especially working with people, with musicians, and not just the musicians, it's the whole crew that's on the road. You're kind of constantly on the road with people. There's people all around you. And so how can someone still be isolated, feel isolated, when they're around so many people? Because I can imagine that feeling is still there. So I'd love to hear from you, and then Usama next.
Well, this is a great question. I think of the quote from the great Janis Joplin, who said, "On stage, I make love to thousands of people, and then I go home alone." You know, that there are these extreme highs of connectivity, of exuberance, and then a moment after. And I think that different people bear the weight of that in different ways, from, people whose artist's name carries the whole thing, and they just worked to write an album of songs and tour it, and then there's the next moment, and a whole crew of people is relying on them to make the next single, put out the next album, and get the show back on the road. And then, as you said, crew members who are also working arduous hours and, can feel themselves as being a cog in such a larger scale production that relies on them to get up and do that work. So there are a number of challenges involved in the isolation, and as well as everyone's individual psychodynamics at play in the tour bus, or backstage.
It's a powerful way to think about that, being on stage and being in front and having all the attention and then going home to nothing, even though there's people around you all the time. Yeah. How about for you? What's it been like? What comes to mind for you?
What comes to mind for me is, first, I played with we had 53 guys on the roster, and in the locker room, we stuck together for the most part, but I'll be honest, just because you're teammates doesn't mean that you're friends. But every day you go in, you got to show up and be at your best. That's what it is when you're at the top. You're the best at what you do. You got to be the best, and everyone around you expects that, right? And I'm not just talking about sports right now, because now I'm the vice president of player engagement at the NFL, at the New York Football Giants, and every day now, about 90 guys sometimes on our roster are expecting me to be at my best. And I could lie and say right here, oh, I'm good. Every day I go in and I'm upbeat and I'm uplifted and I'm hyped. But no, my emotions are isolated. I keep them within. I'm not, so you know what, today, Jenny, you're doing a great job, because this is perfect for me. I struggle every day. With being on top, with being the man, with being a dad, whether I'm as Ted, I'm not sure if he's still in here somewhere. Ted, you said daughters, let them cry. No, I'm like, all right, you gotta be tough. Zion, come on, man, pick it up. But then I think about it, you know what? I let Arya fall, but I picked her up before she hit the ground. Zion, when he was riding his bike, I let him fall, or he hit the ground. And toughen up, son. And now that leads to that isolation because we gotta be tough. But I'm learning that tough isn't about being isolated. It's about understanding the power of a network, of a brotherhood. I'll say family. I don't want to just say we got to have brothers. We got to have family, and not necessarily blood, but ones that I respect enough to know that they're dealing with it because I'm very empathetic. So I go into work sometimes, and I'll tell either players or my direct reports, hey, I'm struggling today. You know, and hey, I just don't have it today. I'm gonna deliver how I can. I'm not gonna use this as a crutch, but I'm gonna need you to pick me up a little bit. And being able to do that lends to my staff understanding, you know what, I can be comfortable with telling my supervisor. Players can be comfortable with telling their mentor or their teacher, or big bro or unk, some of them say to me. But they can come to me with their issues, or they can share, hey man, I just didn't have a good day. I'm not having a good day. Hey, cool, if you want to talk about it, I'm here for you. Matter of fact, I might just let the position coach know that so that they can expect a little bit of a different body language to expect or a different performance from the guy. But that's where that emotional isolation happens, but from my perspective as a leader, I can say, you know what, I get it, and I'm right with you.
You too young to be unk, by the way. You too young.
I thought so too.
I'm sitting here smiling because, and I'll just be like real, like the exact thing you just said to the players and some of your direct reports. I was just gonna scream from the stage today. Like, it's Friday at 2:00. I didn't want to walk in here. I didn't feel like I had much to add today. Like, whatever the right side of the bed is on, I woke up on the other side of it today. So like, I'm just here to say, like, I feel that, and like, if I was gonna say anything today, I was just gonna tell people where I'm at, which is like, you know, exactly what I just did. So.
Appreciate that, man.
Somebody's gonna have to shut our mics off because I'm not stopping. I'm loving this. I'm loving this. Keep this going. So much of what we're talking about here, I think, comes back down to fear. Fear of not being this or not being seen this way or not feeling this thing. And so I'm curious, and Zach, I want to pass this back to you. This fear of being irrelevant or not being who you are, and like maybe even in your own personal journey, how has fear and irrelevance shaped what you're feeling, what you're thinking, how you're moving and operating now as opposed to how it was before for you?
Yeah, you asked at the beginning to say what we believe, right? And when it comes to fear, I believe that a lot of my behaviors and actions are driven by fear. And I believe that's generational. Like, if I get really honest with it, I believe a lot of what I have today and a lot of what I possess was passed down to me by my father. And that took a lot of deep child of origin work and going and doing some really intensive therapy about the way that I grew up, which, by the way, I lived a beautiful existence. Like, I was given everything that I could ask for as a child, but what was stripped of me as a young man was my ability to be curious about what I actually wanted to be. And when she said I wanted to be a baseball player, the truth to that question is my dad wanted me to be a baseball player. I didn't want to be a baseball player, right? And so when I go back and I look at that as a young kid and knowing that a lot of my relationship with my father was based on this thing that he wanted for me, and I didn't have this ability to think for myself as a young man, what's going to happen as I grow up into this world? You know, I'm going to continue to strive and try to be a thing that was programmed into me as a young child, and then I'm going to pass that down to my kids if I'm not willing to break the cycle. You know, and I think what I believe as a man and as a leader, it can be lonely at the top. You know, there can be a lot of fear. And so what I try to do is I try to give myself and the people around me, especially the men around me, the ability to be curious about what it is that they actually want to be, and not what they think someone else, especially that father figure, wanted them to be. And it took me, bottoming out with a needle in my arm at 27 to kind of come out of that and be willing to do the work. And I don't blame my dad for that. Let's be clear. Like he is one of my best friends in life is my father. But we were able to talk about that, because when I stopped playing baseball, that relationship took a turn for the worse, and we had to do a lot of work to get it back.
Yeah, that's powerful. You mentioned clarity and purpose, and Isaac, I want to pass this over to you as our psychoanalyst on the panel here. And so one of the things that I do for my work as an executive coach, I do leadership training, diversity training, public speaking training. And one of the questions I get from people all the time for public speaking is, hey, Brooks, can you teach me how to be more confident? And I tell people that public speaking has nothing to do with confidence. It has to do with using specific tactics and skills at the right time to convey your message with clarity and purpose. And so I'm so curious, Isaac, for you, how does understanding that clarity and purpose, how can that help someone alleviate those feelings of fear or push through and move past those feelings of fear?
Sure. Thanks for the question. There's a lot of different orientations in the therapeutic space, a lot of different ways that people work, and a lot of different sort of philosophies and modalities of coming to therapy. And at Backline, we definitely have a roster of people who work in wildly different ways, from people who work more like executive life coaches to people who are really in the mindfulness space. I feel kind of like I'll tell you a little bit about how I orient my work in therapy, and it kind of follows off of what Zach was saying about being able to think for oneself, and even fear. Playing on the last topic, what fear is about for someone is not always so apparent. In fact, most of the time, even if you have a sense of what it is you fear, there's far more to it. So I think in the therapy space, I really try to work with people on helping them know their own minds, come to be able to understand how they think about things, and what gets in the way of understanding that. I have a lot of people come to you asking about confidence. A lot of people say to me, how do I get rid of my anxiety entirely? As if I have magic words for that, which is, a kind of aspect of the anxiety, that it's uncomfortable, that they want to move away from it as soon as possible. It's not a good space to stay in. But if you can take the time to come and understand your own mind through the relationship that therapy offers, I do think that clarity, things do become more clear in less obvious ways.
So how do I get rid of my anxiety entirely?
Right. If you find the answer to that, let me know, please.
Thank you. Usama, I want to pass this to you here on waiting to ask for help, maybe until maybe one would say it's never too late, but until these major consequences happen. And so working with the players that you're working with, there's got to be some people that are waiting till that rock bottom that are coming to you. So what are some things that you are doing to encourage the players to ask for help before things get worse? And by the way, for all of our panelists here, as we're coming to a close pretty soon, let's shift our minds more towards action items going forward now. I love hearing everything about what you believe in the past, but I want to give our viewers something that they can use and they can do. So keeping that in mind, what are some things that you do to encourage your players to come and seek help faster?
And I'll speak to my own experience again because it shaped my belief on this. First, as a rookie, I was fortunate to be drafted to the New Orleans Saints, where we had a head of player engagement who was my first mentor, so to speak, in the professional ranks. And this man took me under his wing. And I didn't realize he was not just taking me under his wing, he was taking the entire roster under his wing. And that's a tough lift, right? You think about what I just described in terms of 53 guys, upwards to 90 at some point. But anytime I had something going on with me, I felt comfortable because he was comfortable with sharing with me. Similar to the story I told earlier. When someone else is transparent or vulnerable or is able to share some of their baggage with you, you're more often or more apt to say, you know what, I can do the same. So that started early on for me, and I leaned on him at all times. And I mean, it was a time when I felt like I should be playing, I was mad, my folks were putting pressure on me, my friends, everyone was talking about, man, I thought you were gonna do this, and I'm just like, what the heck, man, why am I not playing? And the head coach, during the meeting, he said, some of you guys have been drafted, some of you guys think you all are all good, but if you don't go out and show me something, I'm gonna cut you. You will be released. Not cut, all right? You will be released from the team, fired, terminated. And I didn't think he was talking to me. I'm like, man, I've been playing well when I get the chance. Y'all just need to give me a chance. Well, that confidant, he came to me and said, hey, bro, after the meeting, he said, coach was talking to you. Right then and there, reality check. I'm sitting back like, all this stuff that I'm like complaining about, I haven't really been performing. I've been living in this like fantasy, right? Like I'm thinking I was balling. Then I checked the tape and I saw internally, I was like, oh, well, okay. Nah, I haven't. But that game, the third preseason game, I went out and I balled out. Forced fumble recovery, tackles, did my thing. And I stayed on the team for a couple more years. So I say that because that opening up, that sharing is the first measure for myself that I pass on to others and say, hey, you gotta be transparent with your crew. But then I think it just shapes in a culture, the culture that you wanna build. If you wanna build a culture where you're going to celebrate resilience and dependability, because another thing I heard in the NFL was your ability is your availability. And if you're not available, you don't have any ability. So you will get let go. And if you're constantly pushing people to come in early and leave late, no matter what's going on, people are gonna start to withhold information. They're gonna fight through it. It's gonna lead to burnout. They're not gonna be as productive. Different things are gonna come out down the line. And that's where you build out that culture that is, I'll just say straight up, toxic. Now, the last thing that you mentioned as well, and I want to just go back to that question that you asked in terms of why do you wait to the end? You got to think about how long you've been doing it at the top, how long you've been performing at this high level. You got this big house, you got this nice car, you got all these things, and shoot, I'm not making this money anymore, or I'm not performing, and I gotta sell this? And everyone, man, I bought my mom's a house, now I gotta tell her, hey, Mom, you can't live in that house anymore? You wait until that point. And like you said, you wanted to say, nah, it's never too late. Well, shit, in that instance, it's too late. And a lot of that comes from all of the success that you've had, and a lot of people want to say all of that work is amounting to why you've gotten there. It's partly part of it. Some of it's natural ability, some of it's innate, but the other part is, you know what? It's just fortunate that you were there. I know we got to move on.
I'm feeling everything that you're saying, and I love those points. I'm imagining that situation where you got a house for your mom, and now you got to take that back, and that's another one of that pressure that a lot of us feel. And Zach, I want to hear from you on this one here too. And not just from your personal experience, but as someone who's the CEO of this organization that's helping people recover too, what does it actually feel like for a lot of people, a lot of men to ask for help?
I mean, initially, it's terrifying, right? Like initially, that initial hand going up, it's one of the hardest things I ever had to do. And then right after, there's a enormous sense of relief that that you can't even imagine, that I couldn't imagine. And I do work with a lot of high achievers. I consider myself to be a high achiever myself. You know, I think this talk is kind of swirling around a lot of that. And in behavioral health care, right, which I've been working in for 14 years, that first word, behavioral, right? Like I think we, especially as men, when we get to that point of burnout or exhaustion, we forget about that. And I have you asked for some solutions, right? Like a very basic checklist for myself around behaviors. Are you sleeping? Are you eating? Are you drinking water? And like, you might laugh, but those are 3 questions. If you really answer those honestly, like I'm telling you, you're gonna see something that you didn't see before. And then the second point I wanted to make just on solutions quickly is I had the opportunity to interview Dr. Niobe Way, who's a professor down at NYU, and she's been studying men, specifically young boys, for a very, very long time. And what she said is, these boys, right, they're telling us what they need. They're telling us everything about them. We're just not listening. So for me, my job sometimes is just to shut up and listen.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful. And Isaac, pass this last year, maybe just quick 45 seconds because we're coming to time. And by the way, we refuse to leave the stage without any questions. So someone out here better put something in your mind right now because we're not getting off with at least one question. But Isaac, for you, how about and this could maybe some free psychoanalytic advice for all of us here. What are some solutions that we could do to avoid burnout, to avoid these high feelings of anxiety? And I love what you just said here, Zach, about some things that we can do and how hard this is. But how about from your perspective, Isaac? So some quick things that we could do to avoid these things.
Well, I certainly think talking with one another has been a real takeaway here. And I also think that sometimes there's a real sort of split between what's personal and what's professional. And, I think the 4 of us have really benefited from incorporating our personal experience into what we're saying here. And I think when you recognize that your professional life, we're talking about professional burnout, right, specifically, has no sort of trace of your personhood in it, you're kind of destined to run yourself a little ragged. And what incorporating one's personhood, one's personality in the workplace looks like is a lifelong endeavor, right? Like whole career long of figuring out where you fit into your professional persona. But I definitely think it can be palpable when that's missing.
Yeah, it's powerful. I love that. Finding a way to bring that personality into your work can be really powerful.
Can I share something that we can do?
Yeah, let's do it.
There's one thing that everyone in this room could do. Call a man. Call a man up and check on him. Like, right after you get out of here. Don't text, call. And if they don't pick up, call someone else. See how they're doing. That's something that it brings me joy when I can check in and get whether it's good or positive, make a positive impact, make an impact from my own standpoint. So
I love that. As the resident executive coach here, I can't let people leave without making commitments that they can follow through. So raise your hand if when we're done this whole summit here today, you are going to call a man and check in on him.
I love that.
Let's see over here. Okay, love it. Thank you. So as we said, we can't leave without any questions. So what do you got?
I have a question. This has been great, you guys. I'm curious specifically for musicians, also for athletes, and of course all high achievers, executives, the complex relationship with social media, right? We talk about performance and performing. For so many of us, it helps our job. It's good for us in a lot of ways. We can connect, we can discover. I would love to hear the nuances of that as it relates to this conversation.
I feel like this is a whole nother. So I had a very bizarre, something I did not show. It was like in 2020, I actually went on a reality television show. So my following went from like 500 to 700,000 overnight, right? And so you talk about like being thrown into a world that I had no idea about. And over the past 5 years, I've had to navigate that in a very, what I've done is I've committed to myself, I'm going to use my platform for things that I stand for and things that I care about, which is behavioral health care. I have also recently bought a second phone so I can put my social media on the cabinet or whatever and leave it and not think about it, because I did find myself the dopamine hits, right? Like how many likes, how many comments, and like, it's true for everyone. I think I'm just willing to say it. Like, you know, like I see the messages, we see the comments, like the good and the bad. So it's a polarizing thing. And I've also got a laundry list of lessons of people that said, thank you so much for sharing. You saved my life, you saved my brother's life, like whatever it is, we got into treatment because of you. And that's where you can't turn your back on that, because that's real meaningful work.
I'll share that with social media, I've taken a different approach. At first, as a player, I was on then Twitter, and I was getting all types of comments when I played well, all types of positive feedback, likes, and all that when I played well. But as soon as I made a bad play, they crushed me, and I bowed out. I said, man, I'm off of this. Some guys I know can take it and they'll continue to feed and continue to look at it at halftime, look at comments. I said, no, I'm done. And I would never recommend that to the guys now. I tell them, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Stay on, but just don't let that rule how you feel about yourself. And now I have 700 followers, and
I'll trade you.
But I get on and I say, I'm just going to share the same messages that I'm sharing now. I run every day. I'm on close to 1,500 days straight of running, and I share a positive message when I run. And I ignore whatever is negative out there, but I do keep it real because I know that social media is easy to just be a highlight tape, and that's how I look at it. All highlight tapes look really good. And if you look at everyone's highlight tape, you're gonna expect them to be amazing people. They're this, they're living life. They have nothing going wrong with their lives. But that's not reality. So I share with the guys and I share with the players on our team, and I'm like, bro, hey, I get it. Leverage social media. Build your brand how you wanna build your brand. Myself, as an individual, I'm going to share my runs and my love for being active and my love for positive storytelling on my social media page.
Well, you have 701 followers now, because I'm about to follow you in a second here. When I became an executive coach, one of the hardest lessons I had to learn was getting over this fear of asking the wrong question. Like, I always thought I had to, like, if you weren't crying at the end of my session, I wasn't getting you. And then I realized that sometimes the wrong questions point you in the right direction. I often think they always do. And so when I compare that to social media, for me, I put out things out there that feel right, that feel authentic for me. And if the signal comes back that it wasn't the right piece of content, I adjust if it's something that I feel like I want to adjust, but then there's other times where I'm like, I don't care if y'all didn't like this. I loved making this. And so for me, the social media connection is about building something and making something that feels right and authentic for you. And as long as I accomplish that mission, I don't let the lows get me too low, and I don't let the highs get me too high either. Yeah, Isaac, what's on your mind from the social media question?
You know, I've seen bands, to your question about bands, operate it in different ways. For some people, quick, easy content, it allows them to keep going. For other people, that is too daunting, and they really spend some time producing something that they feel really good about sharing online, and the production element of that, allows things to take on another tone where they're actually using more creative capacities and working as a team. But I think it can be a hard thing to be honest about, relationship to social media. It's confusing.
Well, listen, everyone, thank you for sharing so much of yourselves and your story. Oh, go for it, yeah. Hey, what's up?
Hold on, Lauren.
Wait, let's get the mics so we get you on there. There we go.
Hi, this is so helpful. I'm curious, this is a really specific question, so if you don't know, it's totally okay. But is there ever a place for a colleague, for someone from someone's employer in an intervention setting? I'm thinking of someone, a man who's having a really hard time realizing he needs help because he's mostly really worried about losing his career. Everybody around him can see that actually he's at risk of losing his career if he doesn't get help.
It's complicated. I think is the truth of the answer. I mean, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this. There's human resources. You know, when we go in and we do interventions, and I've done and conducted many of them, the first thing I tell the family or the people that are hiring me is like every case is different. Like we work on a case-by-case basis, and we look for leverage points, right? And I think the reality of the intervention is that it has changed, right? There was the show, and there used to be this idea that we would break into people's homes and rip people out of there, and they'd be on their way to treatment and happily ever after. But that's not what we're doing anymore. You know, like we're using some motivational interviewing. We're moving forward with honesty. We're trying to get a healthy group of people to surround that person and communicate to them honestly about what's going on and how they're feeling. And then kind of like level up the pressure from there. I'm happy to talk to you more about it, but there's definitely been situations in my career where the employer or a colleague or a business partner has actually been the key person to inspire that person to actually get the help they need. So it's tough though, it's complicated for sure.
Yeah, you know, I think that there's always a reality element to this kind of thing, and also an imagined aspect of it as well. You know, there is the reality of sometimes taking a break away from work or complicating your work-life scenario for the sake of getting mental health service. You know, that's you know, there's tangible things involved like money and time. But there's also, you know, a kind of resistance to getting treatment. It's you know, a factor. I think we all kind of want it and don't want it, you know, and how to talk with people about that really depends on who they are individually. I mean, some people I can say that to and they say, yeah, it's actually been really hard to admit that I have been struggling with this, that, or the other thing, and other people will, you know, hammer home the idea that it's going to take away from their job, or they can't afford it, or, you know, any number of things to really avoid doing it. And at some point, you know, you have to say something more like, you're really hard on yourself. Really hard on yourself. You know, let's talk about that part, you know, and that's the foray into understanding more about the risk that they feel in getting help.
And obviously, I'll just add, like, if the person, like, there is another level of, like, if the person is at danger, there's 911. You know, like, I just have to say that as a behavior, like if you're, like, worried about their life, then we're going to kind of, like, elevate the measures we take.
Yeah, quick plug for Backline. We just 2 weeks launched a 24-hour crisis hotline for the music industry. So that is available.
That's great to hear that. That's great to hear. One quick response for you. We have one other question coming, so I want to leave some time for that. From my perspective, there's always a place for it, because I think that we believe that these interventions have to be this huge deal where we're all coming into a room and, like, you know, sometimes it's just a simple, small question. They're like, I don't feel like you're okay. And that question, the hand on someone's shoulder, can make the difference of someone opening up and making and doing something that they could actually save their lives. And I would argue we spend more time at work with people that we work with than we do with people in our personal lives. So what better place to try these things and try to help people than at work? And then whatever mistakes we make, we can bring those mistakes with us to our personal life. We're actually better at this with the people that we actually love. And so from my perspective as someone who thinks about coaching and works with organizations, I think there's always a space for some kind of intervention. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah.
And if we could just have one person answer it, I'm so sorry, we are very tight on time. Okay, take it away.
Thank you. There are certain environments, certain sub-communities, subcultures that are inherently toxic. And the toxicity within those environments can lead to very tragic repercussions. Here I'm thinking specifically the blue culture, which is law enforcement. Certainly various industries have their subcultures that can be very toxic. So the question is, how do we mitigate that? And also, how do we empower future successive generations to think critically and to be clear as to, this is not conducive, this is not healthy for me, this is not healthy for someone in my environment?
I'd love to pass this for you to answer this one. This is a good one, because as working with players that are coming up and thinking about those next generation of players, what comes to mind?
It's funny because I know that you're a former policeman, so I was like, you know what? Let me hear what he has to say about this. Honestly, I really would. And the only reason I'd have come up, and I'm gonna be really quick. I know you said only one person, but I gotta get your take on this. I will say, from a standpoint of being a young black man in PG County, Maryland, being handcuffed at one point and put on the curb and sat down at 12 or 13 years old and did not do anything wrong but was put on display, I was really, really just confused at the time and scared. Now I've got children, and I remember the first time I was riding down the street, and it was after something negative had happened in our society. I'm not sure if it was George Floyd or something with a policeman, but my children said, "Oh no, there go the policeman." I'm like, no, the policemen are there to look out for you. They're here to keep you safe. They're here to protect you. And that was something that I thought about as a child. I could have went that direction in terms of, I can't stand the police. But over time, I understood that sometimes there are some negative ones within that sect. Not everyone is there to hurt me or is not doing their job properly. But with that said, I know it starts at a young age, and how we perceive and also how they go about their jobs and what might have happened in the past that reared to how they do their jobs and how they come together. So I just had to give that take and my insight, and my past experience, but also wanting your understanding there.
Yeah, thank you for that. I don't think kindness is necessarily something that we need to teach. I think everyone here in this room knows what kindness is. I think we need to teach how to remove the things that stop us from being kind. And so whether those subcultures are within the police or within the NFL or the sports industry, whatever it happens to be, I think we need to identify those things that are standing in the way of kindness so that we can do more of that. But it's a huge question. We'd love to talk with you more with that question when we take a break, but I want to make sure we're conscious of the time here. But thank you, everyone on the panel, and thank you all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.